Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today I have a special friend. We're connecting here virtually, dialing in. Welcome, Pritesh Damani. It's such a pleasure to have you in the lab, man. I feel like we're overdue, and I think you are way more than qualified to be in the lab today. I'm super stoked because I was just talking about offline how you're a true embodiment of what experimenting is all about. As an entrepreneur, business founder of multiple companies, exit strategies, and then also you're finding yourself into real estate after understanding also the importance of real estate as you invest in real estate. And a big shout out to Caitlin as well, because that's how we connected. So first of all, welcome to the lab.
Thank you.
Welcome to the lab.
Thank you.
And Pritesh, you're dialing in from New York. Am I correct?
Yes.
Awesome. I'm currently right now in Boston. But the reason why I say it's overdue, I want to give you guys a full circle. You guys know I do the OPT meetup mastermind, and I connected with Caitlin, which is Pritesh's wife, and they're both active real estate investors, very humbling individuals. It's just refreshing. And Caitlin kept telling me, you got to be my husband. You guys will just click, because she knows I'm very entrepreneur minded and we're boots on the ground with real estate. And then I have to say, when I met you, I was very impressed. Straight to the point, a very sharp individual. So I'm humbled to be here in the lab with you, and I want to get into the beginning of. Take me a step back. We're going to get into the RealtyCrunch. We're going to get into the companies. We're going to get into real estate. But I want people to get familiar with. I'm a true believer that you're a reflection. Your companies are a reflection of the individuals behind them who are driving them. And so I want to get to know who Pritesh is and who Pritesh was maybe in the beginning before all the, adventures and endeavors, and take us bring us full circle to where you're at today. Kind of like a little quick overview of who was Pritesh before and who is Pritesh now.
Oh man, that's a hard question. Well, first of all, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
And I'm a big fan of, I listen to every video you put out, and I'm always impressed. And it's my turn now, so that's great. And,
absolutely.
And it's such a tough question, man. I'm almost 40. I'll be 40 in on December 1, right? So, and I used to tell my wife I'm going to retire when I'm 40.
Yeah.
But I met my wife in 2003, right? So it's already almost half my life, right? It's crazy. So, I came to the United States as a student in grad school. I got a great opportunity. My tuition was almost paid for. I come from a very modest background, so for me it was like a huge help. And I got a great job, great opportunity to learn a lot in a small span of time. Small span is like still, 6 or 8 years or something like that. I spent 6 years, I think, at my first job. And after that, I started doing my own things. And I've partnered with people to run businesses. This is my third business that I started by myself. But I'm always been gifted when I've been surrounded by people who are amazing. Right. And I think that's my biggest gift, is somehow I found myself around people who are just outright amazing. And they have, for some reason, helped me. I still don't know why, but a lot of people helped me a lot. It's unbelievable. So, today, I have basic stuff covered, and I always want to, I'm still an engineer by definition. I always tell my friends, I'm an engineer. I like to make things, and oftentimes, people start companies because they feel like something needs to exist.
Yeah.
And it's actually sometimes a bad idea. It's people tell you over and over again, it's don't start a company because you're passionate about it, because sometimes you don't look at the size of the market, or you don't look at why someone else hasn't built this. Why are you the first genius who came up with this idea, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes that's not the case. Someone else has already tried and failed. And companies fail for so many reasons. Like, it's crazy. You're too early, you're too late, you run out of money before you were successful, like all sorts of crazy stuff. The market is not there. Right? Only 10 buyers for your product. It could be anything.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, like, I love to build things, and I'm fortunate enough to like do it for 15 years now. It's crazy.
Okay, I love how you got right into some what I believe are key pillars that I think sometimes you might take for granted, because I think people just don't have that compass. But you mentioned a few key items I want to bring to light. One is the people. You mentioned you're always, and I think it's not by chance, Pritesh. I think it's obviously you, whether you subconsciously realize it or not, you're doing a very good job of bringing the right people in your circle, and that's important, because you can have great ideas, but to implement them by yourself is tough. You need to have the right people. And then you talked about demand, market and demand, and I think that's also very important, because there's a lot of people who have ideas that might be cool, but is it cool for you, or is there a demand in the marketplace, right? There's a fine difference between that. And before we dive into that, which I think is remarkable, is when we talk about the people, and in the lab, I'm taking notes as you're speaking. So I want to take a step back. I don't know if people caught this, right? You're engineer by trade. And it's funny because I think there's this idea of like who engineers really are, but it sounds like you're a mix of like an engineer who's like an integrator, and then also like a visionary at the same time. You said you started working early, and you started, I guess you got exposed. It sounded like you got exposed to a lot of things. You hit the ground running really fast. Do you want to just touch on that for a second? Because I think that might help us kind of like
I mean,
get to the blueprint.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I started as a junior programmer in this startup, right? And I was mentored by the right people. And it was a weird mix of timing. It was 2002, 2003. 2004 is when I started working. And it was when tech was going through this craziness. Like, you're lucky to have a job. When I was an immigrant, I was super lucky to have a job. Like, let's be real here, right? Like, I was freaking out. I was not going to get a job. And here I am. Like, I got a starter, like an entry-level job, and I was super fortunate. But I was also an immigrant. I did not have a life. Like, I loved Decode. I stayed there. Like, I mean, we showed up at 10 a.m. and like oftentimes we would be there till 9 p.m. Like, me and like a couple of my buddies who are still a great friend of mine, and we would just work and like have fun. We had a foosball table, play foosball, whatever. Like, it was just like there was like this what I call work-life integration. It wasn't work-life balance. It was work-life integration, because we didn't know we were working when we were working, because it was so much fun. Like, it was never work for us. And it still is today. Like, I am never working, right? Like, I'm always just doing what I think is natural. People tell me like, what do you do on the weekends? You need to get a hobby. And I'm like, I love to code. I mean, that is my hobby. It's very hard to explain. Like, it's like, so what do you do to relax? Like, code. What do you read? Like, I read technical stuff because I like it. I mean, like, I don't have other things. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I started like as a junior programmer. I rose through, I was promoted multiple times. And at some point I realized that there's a famous technical thing. Like, there's only a few ways to flush a cache. A cache is like something that remembers and like, like very close to the edge. What it means, like, if you ask 1 + 1, the answer is always 2. So can I just remember the answer so that I don't have to actually do the math and just tell you 2 every time, and it's faster, right? But for some reason, if that answer changes, then I have to stop remembering that so that I can give you the new answer, right? So that, believe it or not, that's one of the hardest computer science problems, is to forget things. How to forget things that are irrelevant, right? So Google, for example, when you do a search result and you say like weather in downtown Manhattan, Google most likely is not doing any computation because other people are asking the same question. So it's just did the computation once and it's just showing you the result as quickly as possible. But when the weather changes, they need to realize that and flush it and like refresh that result. That is really hard. That problem is super hard, right? So I used to joke with my friends, is like, there's only a few ways to flush a cache. Like, what I meant by that is like, computer science is ever evolving. There are new languages and stuff like that, but once you make things, you can keep making them in a new way, more efficient way, faster, smoother, all of that stuff. But at some point, I wanted to do more, and I found myself being able to convince other people that I could do a little bit more, right? And like I could sell ideas, and I could convince them that something needs to exist, and I could start selling a little bit. So that kind of pushed me in that direction, and I had the right mentors.
Do you feel that you had, Pritesh, do you feel that, I appreciate that. Do you feel that you had that flexibility in a startup environment? And do you
100%.
See, so the reason I asked that, I think is just so interesting, because I think you talked about surrounding yourself with the right people. And I think, sometimes things happen by chance, but I also think we can also build our environments, right? And it sounds like you were surrounded by, people who are very progressive in their thinking when it comes to just ideas, startup culture, gave you flexibility. Sounds like you had input. Am I correct, or could I be off?
All of that is correct. Like, I had a tremendous mentor, boss. He's one of the smartest people I know. He, like, the team cultivating a team. Like, there's this famous GIF that goes around on LinkedIn. You probably have seen it, like a leader versus a team leader versus a boss, and like the boss, like the guy who's like sitting on the top and screaming at everybody.
Yeah.
And then
the leaders from behind,
like pulling the thing in the front, and everybody else is pulling the trolley with them, or something like that.
Yeah.
So the idea is like, team bonding and like team motivation, or the team inspiring other people to do things that they, and telling them, yes, you're capable, figure it out, and empowering them is, I think, the right word, enables a lot more than just getting the answer at the end of the day, right? I'm not sure if I'm doing a good job explaining, but
no, you are. And I think it's important, though, because what you're saying is, what I was trying to get out of it is I think environment is everything. And it sounds like, I'm curious, because I think people have opportunities now, and there's a lot of startups, and maybe there's opportunities where the money might not even be right. But I'm thinking, as you're saying this, I think it's healthy for us to run that, analysis internally, and be like, okay, am I in a position that will give me like upward mobility? Am I in a position that I will get empowerment to have my thing? And I think that's important. Because I think I'm curious to hear if it was there that you got your inspiration, or was maybe from an external source in addition to it. What do you think?
It was a situation. I think my family too, like my dad has owned businesses for all his life. Yeah. So I come from a place where that culture, or the family environment was very business oriented. So that but yeah, I mean, I will say that if I had a kid who was like, he or she was 16 or 17 and was like looking for the first internship, right? The number one thing I would tell them is like, don't look for the money. Like, it's compound interest, right? Like, what you're compound interesting is knowledge, not money. Like, money is a side effect of knowledge. Or when I say money, I mean comp or whatever you're looking for. It's a side effect of knowledge, not the primary. It doesn't happen on its own, right? Like, what you bring to the world is and the side effect is like, some kind of compensation. Yeah. But if you don't do what you do in the world right, then that side effect is just like not going to happen. And you can complain all day how you're like not doing well, but it's kind of pointless. So I literally tell everyone, like, don't try to make the most on your first job. Like, find the best situation where you're going to learn the most. Because when you're young, you have time, right? When you're old, you got kids and all that stuff, like compounds, right? Like, you're running out of time and you're trying to optimize every minute. Versus when you're young, you're like, your decisions are, oh, do I go to a bar tonight or do I do something? And literally, like, it's like small. So you have options. So the advice I give to younger people is like, dude, just don't optimize on cash, optimize on knowledge, because it's an automatic optimization in the future, right? So
yeah. And I'll take an excerpt from your letter that you wrote to yourself, which we were talking about offline, and you said something interesting. I don't know if you knew it would come full circle, but you used our keyword, my friend. You said, experiment with your career in the beginning. Don't get stuck with one thing.
Oh, that's crazy. See, it's like this is a gift I have. I can have the same thought over and over again. Like it's almost like it's like a program running in my head. So it's kind of funny you bring that up. I was shocked that you looked that up, by the way. Like I was absolutely shocked. It was a speech I wrote like as a graduation. I was invited to my university as like a graduation speech.
Yeah.
And I spent like 20 days writing it. I think the students were just
And
bored.
and it still echoes into eternity today in 2020 while we're recording.
Oh,
Look at
that's
that. That inspired me, and I like it because I think it sets the foundation for what's next. So okay, so let's fast forward a little bit, a couple years down the road, because we're gonna come full circle here. I know you'll be humble about this, but look, I'm here to tell the people who you are. You were co-founder of Go Watch It, which I believe, am I correct? GoWatchIt.com.
Technically, I wouldn't be a co-founder. I would be a partner in that
Partner.
company.
Okay, cool. You're a partner in that. Then you're also involved with FantasyBuzzer.com.
And I was
Winnedo.
co-founder on that one. Vinito, I was the founder.
That's awesome. So walk me through that. That next phase of you were surrounded by the right people. You worked for 6 years. Now, we just said the quote experimenting. What did that next experience look like based on the original assets that you had? It seems like you had a coding foundation, and it sounded like you started to you got exposure with the business side. What was that next step? How do you start your own business? What did that look like?
I mean, Vinito was my first business, and frankly, it was the most risky thing I had ever done. Like I had worked for 7 straight years,
Yeah.
and I took every dollar that I had saved in 7 years and kind of poured it into that business.
And what was the business? What was Winnedo.com about?
It was a software as a service for high school athletic sports.
Wow.
So basically imagine like Shopify or something like that, but for high school athletics. So you can turn on like a one click and you can have a website for your whole program.
Wow.
Right? And it did like at the end of it, it would be like an ESPN like portal. And again, there's a long story on why that was started. It actually lasted 13 years.
Wow.
It was self-funded. So the advantage of having a self-funded business is like, you can run it. As long as you can keep it operational, you can keep it operational. It lasted for 13 years. But 4 years into it, I realized that the market size and like the fragmentation of the business was too much, and it was never going to grow beyond a certain point, no matter what I did. So that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to milk this, but I'm going to move on to something else.
Okay. Now were you able to, get exit strategy successfully? Or did you just step away, or what was that exit? What did that look like?
Well, the good thing is because I built it, right, myself,
Mm-hmm.
I had a team helping me and all of that stuff. Keeping it operational was nearly no cost. It was like a pure profit business. It's like,
awesome.
If I didn't do anything, I'll be sitting on a beach and really collecting like more than full salary, doing nothing, right? So it was a great cash cow business.
Yeah.
It was never big enough to have like an exit strategy, right? Like
Well, interesting.
you know what I mean? Like, so it lasted for what it lasted, and then there was churn, and you kind of end up closing it. But 13 years is a long time for like a business to like stay around.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that. That's for sure. So how does that transition look like for you going into the next? Because I want to get into the one we're going to talk about real soon here, while we have you here in the lab. But I want to get to real quick FantasyBuzzer.com and Go Watch It. How did you transition into those?
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, great question. Like Fantasy Buzzer was like kind of derivative out of Vinito, because I was in sports and I got into fantasy football, and I'm like, wow, I could just automate this whole play.
Of course, Pritesh.
So
you would go there, yeah.
Launched this thing. I'm still on the fantasy league with these guys, with that team. We launched this thing. It was in the top 10 in the App Store. It was great. It was a lot of fun. There are 30 million people who play fantasy football in America.
Wow.
It's again one of those things where the idea is for people to pay like $1 or $2 or something, right? The challenge is back then, like the in-app purchases were not a thing yet.
Yeah.
So like we couldn't get people to just quickly just click a button and like just pay us $1 or $10 or whatever. Yeah. So we had like 150,000 people playing this thing with us, which is quite a bit. Like for like a 2-month launch, within a period of 2 months, we got 150K people. But then, this is where I say like, the experience kicks in, right? Like it's like one of those crazy businesses that are really good, but they only operate from like middle of August to middle of October.
Yeah.
Because
That's
fantasy
right.
football season kind of dies in the middle of October. Half of the people know they lost already, so they kind of bail, and then the rest of the half that they're playing. You know how this goes. Like so,
Yeah, absolutely.
by January someone wins, but like there's diminishing like use, right?
Yeah.
People give up. So, but after that, I joined my partner David and Richard, who were in Go Watch It, and we had a good time. That was 7 years. We were building. We built a data product for Hollywood, and we sold it to National Cinemedia and and Just Watch. It's complicated, which is like basically a place where you can look up a movie and know where you can watch it, right? Like,
Yeah, no, I'm very familiar. That's really awesome. And I got to ask you, because you mentioned partners, you mentioned the right people around the right time. Were these just peers that you grew, maybe from a relation from school? Where did you meet these individuals?
I just get introduced, like, right? I'd say like people are, for some reason I've just had these people who like me or whatever. Like, so there's like this circle and like people talk where you get introduced to other people and stuff like that. And eventually you kind of bump into someone and say like, oh man, I'm looking for a technical person. Like, what do you think? Do you want to come on board? Kind of thing.
Okay. So Pritesh, I got to ask you, brother. I mean, you wrote a letter, maybe 20 years ago? If you read that letter.
So that letter was actually pretty recently. The letter that you.
Oh, it was. Okay. Got it.
2 years ago for a graduation ceremony.
Oh, okay. Because you were giving the speech. Got it. So 2 years ago, you wrote a letter. If you were to write a letter today to, a younger Pritesh who's out there, and you mentioned you have a knack for these things, what would you say if you're just self-assessing yourself? Like, what would you say? I recently put a post out there, like, right place at the right time. It's not about the right place. You always got to be the right place at the right time. But I'm wondering what would be the first couple words that goes on the piece of paper if you're thinking about what you've been able to build today? Because I'm sure you're a very thoughtful person. You reflect a little bit. What do you think is a common denominator that has been, that knack that you've built over time?
What do I tell myself not to do or to do?
No. What would you tell a younger self that to do that is working, that you would double down on, that has brought you these good people in your circle? What do you think it is? If you're from the top of your mind, is there anything that comes to mind?
I think just be honest and straightforward. Like, it's just most people, like, because I'm an engineer, right? And I'm not a biz dev person first. For me, it's just like, all my relationships are not sugar coated, right? And like, I think that might have helped me. It's just, and just honesty is kind of important, because the way you treat people is like the same way you're gonna get treated, period.
Yeah.
So, what goes around comes around, all of those things, right? That come in. So yeah, I mean, if I were to give myself the business advice, I would say don't say no to anything. That's the one thing, because I've said a lot of no's, and I wish I didn't.
That's so interesting, because and this is why I love being surrounded with people like you. I actually recently have a partner of mine who's done very well. He sold his first company, a good friend of mine, and I really admire him, because when I bring opportunities to him, because he's like my digital marketing guy, any site related stuff, I'm like, connect with Larry and Perry. Shout out to those guys. But he's really good now. He's gotten really good. Like, when I send him something, be like, that's not in our scope of work. Like, saying no, and that's something where I've been really like recently, and I'm curious to see what you would say to that. But recently, even for myself, I have a team, I'm an agency, and it's kind of like, sometimes I feel like in order to really be of best service and to be best at what we do from a value proposition, we need to say, this is what we do best and this is what we're going to do. What would you say to that based on your previous answer into what I'm saying? Is that like at a different level, or would you say you were kind of talking more at a opportunist level? Like, what would you say to that?
So, well, let me decipher that a little bit before I give you an answer. So if you are in a business engagement where you signed up for X and you're getting asked to do X plus Y, Y is still something you're good at, right? Or may be construed as part of X. And if it's not going to take you double the time, then don't say no. But tell them like, hey man, listen, I'm doing this in good faith. Next time it's X plus Y, but this time because there's confusion, I'll include it. The idea there is that, you're doing it, you're making sure the person understands that you're doing them a solid by doing it. But it's in your wheelhouse, so you'll do it really well. That's the key, because what else the person's not going to appreciate. It's worse than not doing it.
Right, relationship.
You know what I mean? Like doing the why in a bad way would be worse than saying no, because then it's a reflection of your work. And you're like, hey, I was just trying to help. And the person's like, what do you suck at it? That, right? So if you're good at it, then, and in the future, if you want to get that business, then you would just say yes right now. But remind them like, listen, man, like it was not part of the scope, but I'll do it. Next time I'm going to charge you for it. Something like that, right?
Yeah. I reason why I love this conversation is entrepreneurs. You mentioned this earlier about the market demand. You also got to listen to the marketplace. If they keep coming back and they say they need something, and you're saying no, it's not in my scope of work, then now you're missing out on an opportunity to serve people.
I mean, this is a great example. Like the document solution that we just launched like 2 months ago.
Yeah,
has signed more than 30,000 documents.
Jeez.
Right, and like you can imagine, we were not building a document signing product. Like agents kept, like one of these amazing agents came to us and like, hey man, like listen, like build this thing. It's a major frustration for us. We had two choices. We had a choice number one, which was like, we're not DocuSign, right? Like we can't like flip our business around and say like, let's build a document signing product. That's insane if you think about it. But then a little bit like, our gut feeling was, if this agent is coming and telling us that this is a problem, it's probably a problem for everyone because we know this agent really well, right? And this agent really cares. This, this Scott Harris, this guy at BHS, he really cares. And if he's telling us something, we listen, because he truly cares about the industry, cares about the work he does. It's like one of those rare people. There are many others, but this idea, like, he was the one who asked us for this thing. It's like, hey, can you build it? And like Rob and I were sitting, looking at each other saying, yes. It was like 30 seconds to say yes. And we put up a prototype, like very hacked up prototype in 48 hours. And then we perfected it over the next 2 months. We got lucky in a lot of places, but it's like the solution that people are using right now, which is great. And like, we're still doing it. We're still improving it on a daily basis, but that's an example of like, you can't say no. Right.
I love the protection, because it's like a lot of times, often, and this is why I love, or I'm very proud of the Experiment brand. It's just that you have to move forward. And first of all, when someone has an idea, it's very similar to like a career, right? You start out, okay, this is what I want to do, and then it leads you down a very different path. It's the same thing with business, and we'll get into the exactly what we're really talking about here with your application, which I'm excited to share. It's, you start off with, okay, this is the problem that I think is the problem, and then the marketplace is talking back to you, and then it's kind of like, okay, here's actually the real problem, or but you wouldn't have gotten there had you not experimented and started. You just can't. You just didn't have enough data. You're not out there. You're not boots on the ground. So yeah, I love that.
100%. You can't. And like, I literally sent out a survey yesterday to all agents in our database, which is quite a bit now. And a lot of them have replied already. And like, the survey was like, I promise you it's 3-question survey. Yes, no. Right. Literally, it's going to take you 15 seconds, no more. And it was a letter from me to everyone. And the question number one is, do you want us to implement leases, standard leases? Yes or no? That's it. Like, would you use it? That was the question. Would you use it if we implemented all the standard leases? Right? A digital platform where you can do standard leases. And overwhelming majority is yes. Overwhelming, like 90 to 95% of them. But like, we don't want to build stuff that people are not going to use, but there are people out there that are just telling us what they need, and I think we're going to listen to them.
Yeah, I think that's worked over time. So let's get it right into it. So this is what I was waiting for, the build up, guys. You ready? So here it is. Pritesh reaches out to me, or I reach out to Pritesh. We form a relationship, and as you guys know, I'm doing real estate out in Atlanta, and I'm licensed. And this magic application name of RealtyCrunch is now on my phone and in my browser. And so I can definitely speak on my experience, and I want to talk about how it's evolved over time, because I haven't gotten the forum piece yet, but I can tell, just because I know Pritesh is going to stay humble on his end. It's an immaculate application that really allows you to add properties, have a dialogue with your team. Our team is remote, so I have partners in New York, I have partners in Atlanta, contractors, I have other agents. And what Pritesh has done is literally, because half of the people who you're working with, it could be a partner, it could be your clients if you're a real estate agent, are already on apps like Zillow or websites like Zillow or Realtor.com. What RealtyCrunch does is allows you to add properties in one dashboard. We call them walls. It's kind of like a Pinterest. I always said, like, I think I said it last time in one of the reviews I was doing. It's like as if like Pinterest, I think I said Pinterest and the MLS or something had a baby. Pinterest and Zillow. That's how I call it. And phenomenal job. Like, it works like a charm. I use it, and I wouldn't blow smoke up your ass, man. Like, I use the thing. Like, so that's when I find value in the marketplace, I'm like, damn, I can't believe no one's ever thought of that. And obviously the man standing in front of us kind of led that entire operation. It sounds like you've evolved since we've last spoken. I mean, we did speak. I sent you some forms as well for on the Atlanta side, but It sounds like that's completely a whole new avenue now. Can you just, for those of us who are just tuning in and are not familiar, because I kind of give an overview, and please cover any gaps that I may have missed as you're evolving and you have this beta product that's now really helping people and helping, serving agents and investors. What is it that you're serving as far as the forms go and overall service with RealtyCrunch? We just want to get a good understanding.
Great question. So before I answer that question, I want to say, why did I start this in the first place, right?
Yeah.
So my wife and I, we were looking at properties. The very first property that we ever bought 5 years ago was a big deal for us. Like, it was like a new thing. You're getting into real estate investment. I'm like, oh my God, who's going to, fix things when they're broken in this apartment or whatever that we were buying, right? And she went through, her mother and she went through 100 properties. They looked through 100, physically visited 100 properties.
Shout out to Caitlin.
and by the way, we might have gotten it wrong, but that's a different story.
My gosh.
But we had an Excel sheet of 100 properties, right?
Okay.
And analysis and all of that stuff. And I was just like, I can't believe there's no better way to collaborate than a Google Excel sheet with a bunch of people and keeping notes on properties and stuff like that. But that was 5 years ago. I was still busy with my previous business. But it was just like a thing in my head. I'm like, there's got to be a better way. And then we kept doing this over and over again. And now we have a lot of investments across different units, and the problem still continues. So when we sold the business last year, I was thinking about what's a big business that has a lot of people who can use this application, have a lot of dollars associated to it. And if I made it easy, would that help a lot of people? So we, in my mind, it was like Pinterest and Slack. If you know Slack.
That's true. I love Slack. Yeah.
So it's Pinterest and Slack slammed together for real estate. So the idea is that it's not about, even though you add properties to the wall and you collaborate with your partners or with your agents or whatever, it's more about the conversation, not about the property. You get to see the pretty property photo, but we always give you this big button right there that says go view on Zillow, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that information, frankly, is commodity. It's available everywhere on the internet. MLSs, .coms, whatever, brokerage websites. Thousands of places have the property information, but collaborating correctly is super hard. You do it on text messages, emails, Excel sheets. I don't know. So
you're adding to the existing behavior, and I think that's important. You're not disrupting an existing behavior.
Exactly. So technically, it's a listing site agnostic platform. So our plugin just injects itself in different .coms, and we recognize them, and we make it super easy for you to just collect properties, right? But now with the next iteration, what ended up happening is so we went to agents. I approached you, hey, think about this, use it with your clients kind of thing, right? So, and then agents started asking us for features hey, can you add feature requests? Can you add custom tags and that kind of stuff? But then there is also this form stuff, which is hey, make a document signing platform that's super easy, because I am sending my clients documents to sign. Aren't you about that? Aren't you about collaboration with your client? I'm like,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I'm about. Well, document signing is part of that. I'm like, well, that's a good point.
So I'm curious as far as their existing workflow. Are you saying, because I know you mentioned DocuSign and etc. There's a bunch out there. What was that? What was that gap you're covering? Was it was it keeping it all in under one umbrella? Was it the price point? Like, what was it that you were solving that these agents maybe felt would be better with RealtyCrunch? I'm curious.
We made it super easy. So in DocuSign, you upload, or I use DocuSign as like a, it's like almost like Xerox, right? Like a digital signing platform. So you have to upload a document, you drag and drop the name of the people, you drag and drop boxes where they're gonna sign, and then you send it out. Now, if you have to send 5 of these documents or 10 of these documents a day, you can be spending like, minimum 5 minutes per document times 20 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
We've reduced that to 30 seconds. You pick the document, you add the name and email, you hit send. That's it. We call them smart forms. So the idea is that the form is truly understood by the system. The form, like we truly understand what the form is and where people are going to sign and what the meaning of the form is. So we've kind of like analyzed that. And now we're building proprietary technology to automate that a lot, right? So we made it basically super, super easy. That's really the key. There are systems out there that do the same thing, but not in 30 seconds. That's the bottom line.
Now, the first thing that comes to mind is, okay, there's a bunch of different forms. There's forms in Georgia, there's forms in New York. What does it look like? Do I have to upload my form somewhere, or do I have to send them into you guys, or do you guys have it all in your portal based on the, how does that work for me if I'm thinking as an agent, wherever you are in the country, to get on board with this new idea, new concept?
Yeah, so your standard forms, we will probably just support out of the box over time. It's complicated with real estate because some of these forms belong to realtor associations and stuff like that. So we have to have a relationship. Some forms are government forms. They're on the state gov website. Anybody can take them, right? So there's like this whole flux. Then there are brokerage specific forms, right? We are working with like maybe 400 brokerages right now in New York State. And they have specific brokerage specific forms, fee applications, registration applications, whatever. So they just send us in and we digitize them. We typically do that. At a brokerage level relationship. We don't, at the moment, we're not charging anybody anything to like onboard and stuff like that. But it has to be a brokerage level relationship. So unfortunately, if you're like, hey, an agent who's part of 100 agent brokerage, but wants to just digitize one form, and we can't establish a relationship with that whole brokerage, then, you can imagine how the economy of scale is not there for us.
Yeah. That's interesting though, because I wonder if that's a way in as well. Like, as if an agent's interested, you kind of like, you guys use that as a way to kind of reach back out to the top of the head of the snake?
Yeah. We basically say, listen, we're happy to do it.
Connect us with your team lead or broker.
You introduce us to your learning manager or whoever, and then kind of take it from there. And we have a very high hit rate on that, where we say, give us all your forms that are offline. We'll digitize them. B, it costs you less than DocuSign. Right. So that's the key. It's like, we're happy to do it at an economy of scale situation. So, and for us, it's like the way we've implemented it, the cost of operating that is not as expensive. So, we sign our own documents. We don't have to, there's not too much added cost for us. So yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting journey so far. And now we're like, taking the next step. Like, the whole goal was to make the transaction easy, right? Discovery, signing, and then closing. So now we're working on the closing, and we're going through that phase now. So
that's amazing.
So step, closing process.
Absolutely. And then right before we were offline, you were talking about I don't know if you can put it out in the air, but you're talking about the strategic partnerships you built in, is it Rebani that you were saying that across New York?
Yeah. Well, the Real Estate Board of New York, we were very humbled, but they partnered with us and they told the brokers in New York City to use us as a potential, document signing solution, which was great. And, all the big brokerages, Brown, Harris, Stevens, Halstead, some other big brokerages like Corcoran, Compass, they're all using us. So
it's amazing.
Which is has been an interesting journey, frankly. Like, it takes a while to get everybody to use it, but then if they realize the value, which I hope they do, and a lot of we get fan mails, right? So we get hate mails, we get fan mails. So we get a lot more fan mails than hate mails, but and it reinforces that we're building something of value, right? But again, like there's so much to do, and like I said, don't say no to opportunities, but you kind of have to say no to the right things.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's a skill that I have to hone now, is like to understand, see what makes sense right now, and that might come at a cost and stuff like that. So we're trying to figure out how to make everybody happy, but at the end of the day, like I think we can make most people happy, and some people are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, no, of course. See, that's fascinating, and I'd ask what's next for RealtyCrunch, but if I'm correct and if I'm following you, consistently, it sounds like it'll be based on what the marketplace needs. Is that accurate?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Like we're not building anything that the market doesn't tell us. We're done. Like my original vision, frankly, is done. Like if I were to stop today, as a geek, I'm done. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to put a bunch of properties together on one wall and chat about it. And you use it, you know how it goes. Like
it's amazing. Works like a charm.
Even you have sent in some feature requests, and we'll get to them. We're actually working on some of them actively. Awesome. But if I stop today, I think it will still achieve most of the things that you want to do, and that basically means that I've achieved what I wanted to do, right? So now I have to listen to other people who actually know what they're talking about, right? Yeah. I've never been an agent. I've never been a broker, so I can't be making decisions. I'm like the wrong person to make decisions.
Yeah.
So I have to listen to everybody who's sending me emails, literally every one of them. Yeah. And I take it super seriously.
So that's amazing. I want to get behind your mind real quick, just because, one of the other quotes you mentioned is, as a computer science professional, this is not the end of your education, but just the beginning. And it seems that you're always transitioning, opportunity, real estate. So, one of the questions I have for you is, behind the mind of an entrepreneur who's a business starter and at the same time a real estate investor, do you look at opportunities with the same lens when you look at a real estate investment and or a business opportunity? Or do you see one that's more, you feel like you have more control on one over the other? Like, I'm curious as to how your mind works when you're looking at the next opportunity. Does everything look like a business to you, or you're like, okay, now this is a real estate investment, therefore, I'm looking at it this way, and this is a business opportunity, therefore I'm going to look at it that way and maybe take a little bit more risk? Like, what does that look like in Pritesh's lens?
100%. Like you use two keywords, right? Investment and a business, right? Investment, like you expect a certain return, and that's how you look at it. You can't get real estate. It was very hard for us to disconnect from the property when we made the first investment, because it felt like we were living in there, right? But when we made a second one and the third one and the fourth one, you stop relating to one apartment or 5 apartments, or and then you start doing the averages, right? So, but it's still an investment, right? So you expect a certain return, and you could be wrong about it, but that's it. Real estate is one of the safest investments, right? Like you don't lose the building. Like think about it. Like that's good. Like I could buy a stock and I could lose the whole thing. So, but again, the returns are also balanced, right? You don't get the standard S&P returns typically in real estate. I have actually gotten some crazy returns in a couple deals, but I think that's oddball situation. And then my career is literally one risk after the other. It's like the most risky move. Like it's like literally, it's like zero, everything is zero every time, right? Like, it's either going to work or not. It's so binary with these things. With software businesses, they often are binary. Very rarely you end up in a situation where I have like my first business where you just have a 13-year ride. It's a super rare situation, right? Most businesses are like binary, 0-1. Like you could say semi-worked. Semi-work means didn't work, right? Like that's really what it is. So it's binary, right? So it's super risky. Like what I'm doing in real life every day, showing up to work, is like one of the most riskiest things ever, right? Because you could spend years and not get anything out of it. But the real estate investment is great. Like, right, I would recommend a lot of people look at it as like a real thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious if you're open to share, what keeps you when you're looking at, all right, this is the next risk I'm going to take. I know you talked about like the first 6 years, you're like, okay, I'm all money in, I'll balls to the wall. I'm sure, I'm very curious as to how you and Caitlin work when it comes to that now. Is it more like, all right, cool. So this is what the business grows. This is what we're going to put aside for real estate, or this is what we're going to like. Do you have this kind of structure, or is it more like, if the gut feels right, you pull the trigger? Like, how do you operate as now you're evolved into, a savvy entrepreneur, a father, a husband, and, real estate investor? Like, how does that decision-making process, or even that kind of like allocating funds towards real estate and business look like for you in your life personally?
So Caitlin is the one who leads the real estate side, as you know, right?
Yeah.
And she's like a shark now. I mean, she's like,
shout out to Caitlin when this comes out. Love it.
It's pretty ruthless, right? Like she has an Excel sheet for every property, and like she's made templates and stuff like that.
Yeah,
right?
she does. I've seen that.
Yeah,
by the way. Big thanks to Caitlin.
Yeah. So it spits out like these numbers, and like we bought properties without looking at them. Literally without looking at them, right? It's crazy. I mean, maybe it's not crazy. Maybe it's like normal for everybody, but for me, it was just
That's
like,
awesome.
hey, you're going to buy a property without looking at it? She's like, yeah, but the numbers make sense. What's the worst thing that can happen?
Oh my God.
Right. So.
So, okay. That's it. So, wow. Okay. So it sounds like you guys got a solid balance when it comes to making investments versus the next thing. So I'm very curious to see, because you got this is a whole marathon. You're just getting started, I feel. So I'm very excited to be close to your circle to see, what comes next. And one of the things that, stuck out at me is like, you have a good feel of what's happening in the marketplace. You even summarized that. You said, 2015 was big data, 2016 was virtual reality, 2017 was machine learning, 2018 artificial intelligence and blockchain. Obviously, we got RealtyCrunch sitting at the top. We can't sleep on that. But what do you think could possibly be next, or that you have your eye on? And I'd be surprised if you didn't have your eyes open and your ears perked for what you may feel like you got to have a hunch that, might be a dominant type of, industry in, or I don't know if that's the right way to say it, the next opportunity in tech, I should say.
Oh, man. So I'll tell you, I don't have a good answer for that, but I'll tell you what I tell my daughter, who's 4.
Mm-hmm.
When you're 20, if you're not making robots, you will be oiling robots.
Oh my God. I love it.
So what I mean by that is like, we're going to global automation, right? Like,
yeah,
either it's cheap labor that's replacing American labor, or it's automation that's replacing American labor, right? So that's my answer, man. Everything is getting automated, like absolutely everything, including coding, by the way, including engineering. I expect code to write code in the future, right? At least the basic stuff. So that's my answer. I mean, if you're not making robots, you'll be oiling robots in the future. But that's not immediately. It's like 20 years from now. It's for the kids, not for me and you. We'll be retired.
Yeah, it's man. And any disruptions that you think we're already seeing? RealtyCrunch is a great great tool. Do you see any other disruptors in the real estate, maybe even space? I mean, what I know Zillow's getting into like their own open house, all that. What are your thoughts?
Great question. So in real estate specifically, I think there are 2 major movements, right? One is the open doors of the world, iBuys, right? Like you put in your address and they make you an instant offer. That's a scary world. If that actually works, you can imagine how an AI or an algorithm can basically force you pretty much in the future to sell your house at a certain price.
Oh my gosh.
Right? Think about it.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Right? Like today, it's like, hey.
I mean, the data is out there, right? Like that's so interesting you say that. Like, okay, what are the comps? Oh, we'll pull the algorithm. Like, I mean, it's already
So
there.
the data is out there, but the comps today are based on real people making real decisions.
That's
right?
what. Yeah, that's what I'm
But
saying.
in the future, if everything was iBuy, then what is your comp? An iBuy algorithm versus an iBuy algorithm, or just one iBuy algorithm? Like, what's your
Yeah.
comp? Like, an iBuy platform can come to you and say, okay, your house is worth 500,000, right?
Yeah.
Then you try to sell it for more, you go to the next iBuy algorithm, same answer, 500,000. The problem is in a future where people are buying and selling homes through the iBuy algorithm, the price is fixed by the algorithm itself. So it becomes tricky. So imagine you want to buy a home. You're also going to go to this iBuy.com or whatever it is to buy a home, and it's going to sell you a home instantly. No drama. Here's a home. Here's the price. Take it or leave it. Right. And then it's the second side of the equation, which is you want to sell your home. You put in your address, and they give you an instant offer, and that's it. That's the only way to buy and sell real estate. Imagine that world. It's scary.
It is very scary, very disrupting.
But Zillow, Open Door, and all these companies are rocking in that direction. I do think it could end up being one of the future points, right? It's not like, I don't think this current industry will disappear completely, but the iBuy is not going away. So I think there might be some kind of medium in between. Maybe the low end properties between the 0 to 250,000 are
Right.
but then the more expensive sides are like more, hey, that granite that you have is amazing, so here's an extra $5,000. Like that, the algorithm can't do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I think that's the innovation in the industry. And people talk about agent disruption and this, that. I think good agents are just going to stay. It's kind of hard to pick out good agents. The bad agents are going to go.
Yeah. like typical. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a typical clean, but agents provide a very specific value, a very hard to diagnose or very hard to tell until you're in a transaction of how valuable the agent was. So from the outside, it's easy to say, oh, I don't know about the agent industry. But when you're in the transaction, you need to handhold through this process.
Yeah.
And the insights are useful, right? So if you have an amazing agent, a good agent it's invaluable in many ways.
Absolutely. Kudos to that. Amen to that. So, I mean, look, Pritesh, it's been so real. I can't thank you enough. I'm very curious. Right before we drop, you mentioned, you give so much value. You're a practitioner, which we love. Technology and real estate. This was almost like a treat for myself. Entrepreneur, tech, and real estate. Loved it. Is there anything that you're currently maybe reading, or anything that you read, or a resource of any kind that you feel would be valuable to share with the rest of our list?
From a real estate standpoint?
No, it doesn't have to be at all. It could be real estate, or it could be even just what you're currently. Is there a book right now, or is there something that you turn to get your tech info, or anything that you currently gets your mind running?
This is the book to read.
That's such a gem. The Art of War. If you're currently, driving or listening to this, not watching video, The Art of War. That's a classic right there.
That happened to be on my desk, and I'm reading a little bit every day, but I think that's like a great book.
That's awesome.
It's very dense, but
no, I mean, they say that's what it is. I mean, these, running a company is like going to war. They need a general like yourself to see opportunities, say yes or no. So
it's hurting, right? Like the general, like you have to get everybody else excited about something. It's not just you getting excited about something. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Well, I hope that
magic happens. When that magic happens, like everything works out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's you need that. It's contagious. Right now, I'm reading Rocket Fuel, which is talks about like a visionary and integrators and how they should come together. And it's interesting because it sounds like you have a little both. Like being an engineer and being able to code, being an integrator, but then being a business savvy and I think is what makes you a very special individual. And we're so glad that you were able to step in the lab today. What is the best way the listeners, the viewers can get in touch with your company? Again, big shout out to RealtyCrunch. Where else can we find out more about RealtyCrunch, or even about yourself? Where can we connect with you?
I think the best way is LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm there. We can drop a link in the
Absolutely.
thing. And RealtyCrunch.io is
Yeah.
the application today. I think it's pretty cleanly done. I think if you're looking for real estate, like even as a buyer, and you're not even working with an agent, this is like a great tool. Sign up as a buyer, invite your partners over, and start pinning properties. I can guarantee you, as an investor, this is something that's good to collect.
Yeah.
And we're not marketing to buyers yet, but it's like one of those things that every buyer should have, because I made it for a buyer, even though I sell to agents, because every buyer kind of ends up working with an agent, right? But
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, again, guys, folks, I can attest to it. I'm using it currently actively every day for all the properties that we're doing out in Atlanta, here in New York. This thing is the real deal. So definitely make sure you guys check it out. And if not, inquire about it, find out about it. You need to definitely have it on your phone to streamline everything that you're doing, your current life and your current business. So with that, just like that, Pritesh, thank you for stepping into the lab. And just like that, we are out.